Hello, Barney history fans. Welcome back to the Spots of Love podcast. I am your host, Karan. Um, we have a great guest on with us today. It's another fellow Barney fan from our Barney history fans community. Um, like I said on the last podcast, this podcast has been fun for me because I don't get a chance to talk to maybe all the fans that we have inside this group or outside the group. And so this gives me an opportunity to talk to them and to share things that we like about Barney and share some of our differences maybe as well, and just hear the experiences and stories of some of our fellow friends here in the group. So let's just keep along with that tradition. Today we have another Barney fan. It's Arielle. Arielle, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hello, Karan. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for being willing to do this. Like I said, it's fun to be able to talk to other people throughout the community, especially people that I don't usually get a chance to talk to. So I'm really glad that you tossed your name into the hat to be on here. Um,
hmm
let's just jump right in. How I always start the podcast, because sometimes our stories are different than each other. I always just kind
hmm
of start with how did you get started with Barney? Do you remember your introduction to Barney and what that was like?
I definitely do remember my experience with Barney as a kid. So, like, it actually started when I was a baby at that point. And so, like, I do feel like I was just invested in Barney just right away. Well, like, I do remember, like, a fact when like my family has like a whole bunch of Barney stuff, and they got my sister into Barney ever since she was a kid as well. Well, I'm the younger sister, so like I get
Mhm.
how it feels to like get into her footsteps too. So like when I do remember as a kid or like as a baby, starting as a baby, I was just invested in watching Barney songs. Well, the first Barney songs before the more Barney era. So like
Yeah.
I do love like I was just invested in like getting to know season three at that point because
Mhm.
my genre or like my generation was seasons four, five, and six, and so like season three was how I got into Barney the most, and I do remember rewatching like some of the classics from like seasons one and two as a baby,
Mhm.
and then when I turned 1 year old, I started to have like a Barney themed birthday party as a kid, and I
Yeah.
always remember that time like it was yesterday. And so like whenever I would rewatch a home video from like those good old days, that really shows how much I love Barney as a kid.
Yeah, for sure. We kind of have this a similar story. I'm a little bit older than you. I was born in '93, so I grew up with Barney almost from the very beginning. But I have a sibling who's a year older than me, and he was interested in Barney. So when I was born, he was already kind of Barney wasn't obviously huge like he later became, but he already had like the Barney. I don't know if you had ever seen them or remember them. There was like a Barney like sofa chair that was just wrapped in like Barney's face that matched the like the blankets and things like that. We had
Mm-hmm.
those things. We had the house shoes, and he already had some of those things when I was born. And so it just kind of led into me also becoming a fan. He stopped watching it fairly after that. I stuck with it a lot longer than he did, but I had my introduction because he was already a fan of it as well. Um, and I think I only had two, but I remember having, those Barney birthdays with like the cake and the decorations and all those different
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
that.
yeah, so we share that in common. That's awesome. So you said you grew up within the era, like the second era, so seasons
Yes.
4 through 6. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in that, have you ever gone back as a Barney fan now and watched the previous things, but then also did you watch later things past season 6?
Oh yeah, I do remember. Let's see. I remember watching season seven and season eight
Mhm.
growing up as well. But then during those points, I still remember the time when the second generation of Barney and Friends was still on PBS at that point. And
Yeah,
so, like, I do remember at first when it comes to season seven and eight, I thought I was like, oh, that's not my Barney.
yeah,
But then, like, once it comes to like the reruns of seasons four, five, and six, I was like, oh yeah, that's my Barney growing up. But like,
yeah.
not to be picky on this, but like, that's just how, like how I feel at first about the newer Barney, like coming to like a let's say I feel like yeah, just come to like the newer Barney era.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have within that seasons 4, 5, and 6? Do you have a favorite season? And if so, um, it's kind of hard to like separate those ones because they almost seem like like season 1 and 2 seems like, even though there's different years and things like that, they seem like the same. And seasons 4, 5, and 6 seem like they're the same thing. Um,
Exactly, yes.
almost hard to separate. But is there, so instead of a favorite season, let's say, do you have a favorite home video or episode specifically from that era that's like one that you love the most?
I say from, I feel like during the second generation, I do love every home video of Barney.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to like say what's my most favorite, but
Yeah.
I honestly have to say Sing and Dance would have to be like one of my all-time favorite home videos because that's a time when like both generations would like cross paths together for the very first time, and I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's a great. That's one of my favorites too, because it was just like a great moment in history to see the new and the old together. It was cool seeing those characters, Michael, Tasha, in
Mm-hmm.
with the new kids all together. Really, really was cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm one of those people that I think they missed an opportunity by not bringing Bob Singleton back to kind of
Mm-hmm.
do the music for that. But in the grand scheme of things, it was still a great video. Do
Mm-hmm.
you have a favorite kid character out of any of the Barney characters that you know? Do you have a favorite one that was like always your favorite to see in a home video or see in an episode?
I personally don't think it doesn't matter, but I do
Mhm.
remember a time when, like, before I was born, my parents knew who Min was, and they're like, "Oh, she's Filipino. She's like, she's kind of like us in the series." So like, I can totally
Yeah,
relate to Min's character at least.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I loved Men, and so that's one thing that I think they did right. In the very beginning of the like park era stuff, is the one video where they brought Men back. Um,
Yes. Mm-hmm. And
that
Demi Lovato got to meet her.
Yeah, yeah, it was always cool for me to see like the old mixed with the new kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yes.
So seeing men like in the park was like kind of a surreal thing for me. Just like
Mm-hmm.
seeing Michael and those guys in the treehouse, like specifically Michael, because he was never on a set where the treehouse existed. So seeing him
Right. Mm-hmm.
um in that element, or
Mm-hmm.
the character, or the girl, I can't think of her name right now, who played Kim in the series, who came during the Riff era. She wasn't an actual character, she was just kind of a dancer. But seeing her in that set with like the new dinosaur and things, those kind of things always stood out to me a lot. So I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
see that happen. I wish they did that more, especially with the 20th anniversary. I wish we got to see
Exactly.
some of
Yeah.
that stuff
Mm-hmm.
happen. Yeah. um is there anything that happened with Barney, or not is there anything that with Barney, that you look back that you wish maybe they would have tried or they would have done, that they maybe didn't do?
Yes. I was like, I know I've had these like thoughts coming to my mind like for like so long, and I wanted to say how like I kind of wish that like Joe Phillips and Bob Singleton and David Bernard Wolf can like collab to be the
Oh
Barney
yeah,
music people. So like they can work on the Barney music like as like those like people who like worked on Barney. I do feel like if there's like a mix between like Bob and Joe Phillips and David Bernard Wolf, I think it would be nice to hear all of their arrangements of every song they would like
yeah,
play and such.
yeah. And when Joe joined the show, like way back in the era that you watched, his music was different, but it was kind of reminiscent of what Bob Singleton did, that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
bounce and
Hmm.
fun kind of stuff. I wonder, that would be a question to ask at some point. If I ever get a chance to talk to any of them, maybe I'll ask them. I wonder if they've ever, like, I wonder when Joe coming in, did Bob work with him a little bit before they transitioned, or did they just kind of just throw him in there and just replace? I wonder if they ever did have a chance to actually work together, because there's some movies like Be My Valentine where Bob
Yeah.
Singleton did the
Hmm.
original and then Joe Phillips
Hmm.
overdid it. But even some of those arrangements, but Joe Phillips kept some of the kind of musical things that Bob Singleton did in his original. So I wonder if they ever had a chance to work together. Um, that would be something cool to find out. I'll ask if I ever get a chance to. But that would
Hmm.
be a cool, like that would be something cool to see, whether it's like a music album or something like that, where you just get to hear those three different styles of music to kind of together. That would be pretty cool.
Personally, for me, Joe Phillips' arrangements of Barney music, it does feel like Barney to me, especially with like Bob Singleton's arrangements of Barney music. Like both Bob Singleton and Joe Phillips feel like Barney to me. But
Yeah.
David Bernard, he also does feel like Barney to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of times us as Barney fans, we get stuck in like the era that we were born into, right? So like for me, a lot of the people my age, they're very they're very much very stuck in the 90s of Barney. So the park era stuff is not their favorite, right? Um
Mhm.
or they're very stuck in the very, very early years of Barney. So seasons one, two, and
Mhm.
three, where four, five, and six they can tolerate, but they like the Bob Singleton music and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, that's the thing that's been different with me is, um, I'm a fan of a way they were like I like the changes and things like that. Sometimes I know that some of
Mhm.
them weren't for the best, but I like to
Mhm.
see things change. And so if I see
Yes.
Barney on screen, to me that's Barney, you know.
Mhm.
And so I feel the same way as you. Obviously, all three of those guys are very different in the way that they do Barney and make the music, but they all still feel like Barney in its own unique way.
Mhm.
So I agree with you there for sure. Um,
Mhm.
you said you watched season 7 and 8. Have
Yeah,
you?
after second generation of Barney, I
Yeah.
think.
Have you gotten to a point where you've watched anything later than that, like the Riff era things? Or and how do you feel about that era of Barney?
So when the season 7 era came, especially with like the Rift era, I noticed how like it at first it didn't feel like Barney to me anymore because they took away Stella, the storyteller. They also like took away Scooter McNutty and Miss Etta and Booker T Bookworm, and I always imagined them to be a part of the new Barney season so that
Mhm.
like the new kids can discover who they are.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like once it comes to the Riff era, I do love the Riff era because like when I was telling my family about like there's a new character coming to Barney, they got really excited. And so like I remember during that point, even prior to watching Barney and Friends, I did remember watching um his like Barney live shows as well, like growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one thing that I think they dropped the ball on.
Mhm.
And I know it changed hands and things like that, and there was so much time in between season 6 and when by the time they did season 7. But coming to a park, you would think that especially characters like Scooter and Miss Etta, you would keep those kind of characters because where else would be a better place for a squirrel and a bird to be than in a park, right?
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
I and so I that was a little upsetting for me when that
Mhm.
changed also.
Oh yeah.
Um, but also between season 6 and 7, there was like 2 years in between because
Mhm.
technically Barney ended after season 6, and
Yeah.
then
Mhm.
Barney and Friends where season 7 started, and this is what I don't think a lot of people pay attention to it in this way, but it
Mhm.
it was a reboot or a continuation, right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
it was more of a reboot than it was a continuation. The only thing that stayed the
Yeah.
same was
Mhm.
the dinosaurs, right? The set changed. Some of
Right.
the music
Mhm.
stayed the same, but all the kids
Mhm.
were different. A lot of the writers
Yeah.
were different.
Mhm.
So we saw Barney get rebooted. This new series that's coming up is our third time we've seen Barney reboot in a sense because we have Backyard Gang, and then it
Right.
rebooted
Mhm.
into Barney and Friends 1 through 6,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
they went on hiatus, and then it rebooted again into 7 through 13. Um,
Mhm.
so it made sense that it would change, and that's what I'm thinking. Maybe that's what happened is with so much time in between, maybe those puppeteers and those actors, because that's what they get. That's how they make their living is to act. Maybe they
Mhm.
didn't have the time to sit around and wait if there was going to be a show. Maybe they didn't think there was going to be one anymore, and
Mhm.
they moved on. So I can see why it would make a little sense, why things would change.
Mhm.
But I do think that was a missed opportunity to have, especially Scooter and Miss Etta there, um,
Mhm.
in the park set. It was cool seeing Stella come back though.
Yeah. Mhm.
When they did the 20th anniversary, that was really cool to see her classic way of return, coming in
Yeah. Mhm.
the door and all of
Mhm.
that stuff. That was really exciting to see. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm with you there where some of those changes kind of were a little upsetting. I'm a fan of
Mhm.
Riff myself,
Yes.
personally, being one of
Mhm.
those uh, very early kids growing up with Barney.
Mhm.
I'm a fan of Riff, and I've said it many times before. I think they could have done better with how they introduced him and what they
Mhm.
did with him as a character. Um, but him as a character and the way he looks and the way he sounds, I think is great. It just
Mhm.
came down to the writing and pulling out new elements that we didn't already have. I think that's where the ball kind of got dropped. So I
Oh
wish
yeah.
that that would have
Mhm.
happened. How do
Mhm.
you feel hearing your opinion on the later years of Barney and things like that? How do you feel with this new series coming? And things are completely different now. There's a different look and there's some different names, animation. Um, how do you feel about that?
So for the Barney reboot, I'd say I got really excited because I haven't seen Barney on TV for like years, ever since its hiatus. And so like when I read the news that Barney's coming back with like an animation style, I got excited myself, and then I had to like tell my family members about it.
Yeah.
And then they were like, no way, Barney's coming back. And then I was talking about their opinions about the new Barney, like what will be like next year. And honestly, I do feel like, well, I don't really like show my expectations. I just like keep it to myself. And so I'm just like here, like I do hope they do something like really nice. And
Hmm.
like I'm honestly excited to see how BJ and Bela's design will look like in the reboot. Like, I do respect the fact that like not everyone in the fandom doesn't like the BJ's name change, but
Hmm.
realizing it does mean Billy Joe, I was like, oh, it took me so much, like how many years to like discover like the meaning behind BJ's name. And so I
Yeah.
do feel like, but like to me, like whenever it comes to Billy Joe, I think of Billy Joe as BJ.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, I'm the same way as you. I don't. I've sworn to not really talk about the show, unless I'm here like in the podcast realm. I don't really talk to fans much about it or things like that because
Mm-hmm.
there's a big divide right now about it, and it's a divide that I think is caused by people being. There's a half of us who are willing to kind of okay, let's see where this kind of goes, but then there's another half where they're just rightfully so they're stuck to what they've always known and loved, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to watch that change. So
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that from both viewpoints. um I'm excited to see where it goes to. We've always talked about as fans how Barney needs to come back, or kids need Barney today, and we
Mm-hmm.
get that right now. We get that chance. We don't know how well the show is going to do, or if it's going to be great content or any of that yet. But
Right.
at least right now, we get kids who get the opportunity to have their own Barney and
Mm-hmm.
experience. But it's going to be cool to see Barney back on TV again, in a new way. But also, even though I grew up in those '90s years, the only thing I ever remember seeing in stores was like home videos and things. So I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
seeing toys of Barney and those kind of things on
Oh
shelves.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
as an adult, I'm excited for that viewpoint of it, where I know how Mattel does with we saw what they did with Barbie. So I know once it's time to really promote this show, it's going to be spread everywhere. And so I'm
Mhm.
excited to start to go into stores and be able to see new Barney merchandise on the shelves. That's what I'm looking forward to. I'm definitely going to buy some of those things, even though they're so different. I'm going to add
Mhm.
it to the collection, mix it in with the new and old. So
Mhm.
I'm definitely excited about that as well. Um, let's see here. Do you have a favorite song? Is there one song, maybe without the exception of "I Love You"? I think that one is always like one of the ones that we all love. But do you have any other Barney song, or maybe you have a couple that kind of stick out to you more than others?
Oh my goodness. I have a lot of favorite Barney songs. To be
Yeah.
honest, since there are like too many to like list here.
Uh-huh. Well, give us like one or two. What's some from that list that you have?
Okay, so if I were to choose, okay, so my favorite song would have to be "Being Together" and "It's a Great Day."
Oh yeah, I love It's a Great Day. Being Together is also a great one, but It's a Great Day is one of those that um, I wish that they would use more often, or they
Mhm.
would have used more often because it was one of those feel good songs, right? Um,
Mhm.
you're celebrating how that it was a great day. You're celebrating that you're alive and like you get to experience all these things. That is definitely one of those on my list as well. I'm like you, where I can't choose really just one song. I kind of go depending on the day. I answer the question by the day. So, you know, when I'm thinking about like favorite songs and things like that, today I probably would say "Find the Numbers in Your House,"
Mm-hmm.
which is one that I wish they would have used more of too.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I go by the day of like, okay, well today I'm feeling like it's this song, but there's so many great songs that that is just hard to pick one. So I'm right there with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do have to point out that Wave the Flags is also another song that I like to point out because, like, of course, like that song also puts me in a good mood as well. Like ever since the musical Castle era and the Red, Blue, and Circles 2 era, well, season
Hmm.
2, in other words, and then they got to reuse it in season 7 or 8, maybe
Yeah,
both seasons at least. And then
yeah,
I kind of wish they used Wave the Flags more often, especially with like It's a Great Day, because like those two songs, I do feel like they need more recognition, and like Being Together is always used ever since the second era of Barney.
yeah. Yeah, I love being together, but I think it started to get very played out by the end. It was one of those songs that they would sing, "Oh, we're together with friends. Let's sing Being Together." When they had other ones that could have been used just as much. But yeah, I agree. Have you
Mhm.
ever had a chance to see Barney live at all?
Yes, I did. I remember watching Musical Castle as a kid. That was my first Barney live show I watched, and I do remember the Wiggles as part of the intermission number. And
Nice.
like yeah, this always brings back so many memories for some reason, because like when I found out that they were performing in Anaheim, which is like by Disneyland, I was like, no way, as a kid. And so like we were able to, like, my family and I got to watch Musical Castle live in person as a kid. And I do remember these paper flags I used to own, but then I kind of lost it, and now I want to like reboot on what I lost before, and then now I want to like, like, in the way I want to like revamp the flags on my own, like do it
Yeah.
myself kind of situation. And then like I do remember watching Colorful World as well as a kid. I think I watched this when I was in kindergarten, I think, or preschool at
Hmm.
least.
Yeah.
And so I also remember the paper fish as well, and other sea creatures. I do remember all that too. And then the Let's Go tour, that was the last Barney live show I watched as a kid when I was in second grade, because when I was going to seventh grade, that was when Birthday Bash was already going on tour, and I was like growing out of Barney in that sense, and I
Yeah.
had to like, and I was like already grown up at that point. Like, no hate on Barney, I just feel like I want to like step away for a while, and then
Mhm.
and see when I can regain my love for Barney again.
Yeah, that's awesome. I never got a chance to see Barney live at all. I came close
Mm.
to seeing. Well, that's not true. I'm sorry. Let me back up. I got close to seeing live in New York City, or not live in New
Mm-hmm.
York City. Sorry, the Let's Go tour. I got close to seeing that
Yes.
one.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't get a chance to make it, and I was like in middle school, or yeah,
Mm-hmm.
middle school when it came out. But I really wanted to see it. I didn't get a chance to. I did see Birthday Bash.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it didn't feel like I like the remix, the music, and all of that stuff because, like I said, I like change. I like to hear new things. But even though I got to see that show, that's why I just had that moment. It didn't feel like Barney to me, in that like
Mm-hmm.
live in the Let's Go tour or Musical Castle, birthday, Big Surprise, all of those were like
Mm-hmm.
these big tours, changing sets and all this. Whereas Birthday Bash was just like, let's just put people on a stage and have them, sing a bunch of songs like a concert almost.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
I took my grandma has an in-home daycare, so I took a handful of daycare kids there, and none of
Mm-hmm.
them were interested in it
Oh my goodness.
at all. And then it was hard for me because I was like, guys, look, it's Barney, it's these guys, and like they it didn't have that wow factor I think that maybe those previous shows did. So
Mm-hmm.
my brain always defaults to like I have never seen them live, but I actually have. I just forget about Birthday Bash so much because
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing magical about it. There wasn't confetti falling from the ceiling. There wasn't any of those like extra elements. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
let's just watch these people on this stage, and that's it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I got close to having an opportunity to audition for Birthday Bash to play Barney.
Oh,
So maybe
nice.
that would have changed my experience with the show if I if
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to be involved, but that fell through. So I just have that memory of being an audience member in this pretty much half empty theater where
Mhm.
it just wasn't as exciting. But I'm glad that you at least had that experience with those two tours, because that's one thing that I'm always jealous of other fans, where it's like, oh man, you got to see these tours live. And hopefully with this new one, they take them on tour, and maybe they'll do a good job. Who knows?
Mhm.
So maybe at least I can take my kids to go see Barney live, which would be cool or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Mhm.
Um,
Definitely.
you said you were like in seventh grade by the time Let's Go Tour came out and all of that stuff, and you were kind of at that point of growing out of Barney. How long was it? Did you kind of step away from the franchise before you came back?
So actually, when I was so second grade was the time I was watching Let's Go Tour, and that was the last Barney live show watching
Mhm.
as a kid. But then well, seventh grade was the time but birthday bash, not Let's Go Tour, by the way, was already going towards like their time of like performing around the world. And so
Mhm.
I do feel like during that point in seventh grade, I feel like I think I didn't have like the time and effort to like go watch Birthday Bash. It's probably because like of course already going to middle school, and I need to like focus on what I wanted to do in high school, like from like future high school life at that point. And I don't want to put like Barney into the spot, because like of course
Sure.
like there could be like some points where like some might think that I'm too old for him,
Mhm.
but realizing that they need to like realize that I'm always a Barney kid at heart, but like in an adult situation,
Yeah.
especially like if it's like growing up as a teenager as well. And so I do feel like I do remember that point, like it did took me like how it wait so talking about my middle school days, it took me like about 4 to 5 years, I think,
Mhm.
to like get back into loving Barney again. But it's just that I can't really like show it to anyone.
Sure.
But just with like the true people I talk to about when it comes to like Barney and stuff, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I went through kind of that phase in high school. Um, I have my own costume business, so I know it's frowned upon by some of the
Mhm.
cast and crew members, but I have my own costume business where I performed as Barney. I did it for free, um,
Mhm.
for a good amount of years, and I started in middle school, and then all the way through high school, and no one knew. None of my close friends or anyone knew that I did that or that I was a fan of Barney. But it was always funny because Barney has a song for everything. So like
Mhm.
I would be at school and I would hear something like between my friends or something that sparked like a Barney song, and I would sing it. And they always thought that I was just making up like music on the spot about everything. They didn't know that
Mhm.
it was actually Barney music. Um,
Mhm.
until years later where they found out that I was a fan and I did all those things. But I did have that kind of moment too for a while where I just kind of hid it from people. Barney now is a lot more accepted than
Mhm.
he was then. So it's a little different now. But I share that with you as well, where I kind of hid it from the public, besides like close family or friends who knew at that time.
Mhm.
Um, all right. Well, let's get to it before we wrap this up. Um, every time we do this podcast, one of the main things that we do is we always have the guest bring in their favorite Barney item, or whatever item really means the most to you when it comes to Barney. So can you share that item with us now and just kind of give us the backstory on why you chose that item?
So there's actually so much Barney stuff that really came to mind. To be honest, that's why I brought everything with me. So talking about this, like like this little banner from like the live shows you've seen, like from
Yeah.
Colorful World, Musical Castle, Let's Go Tour. I do feel like this really sticks out because like this is always like one of my favorite souvenirs growing up as a kid. And I do
Hmm.
remember like once it comes to Musical Castle, Colorful World, Let's Go Tour, I always had to stick with this because I
Yeah.
wanted to know who Riff was, like first thing. Because like I remember like Let's Go Tour was a time I was expecting to get this, but then like my parents went for like the newer Barney. I was like, why that one? Why do you have to like get that for?
Hmm.
But like not to be picky in this situation. I was just more like I want to know who Riff is first thing
Yeah.
before going into that kind of situation. And so like I do like this really like sits with me the most, especially with like, of course, everyone has to say that like the backyard game Barney would have to be like my their like other favorite. I know it's also my other favorite too because I do remember having that like I do remember owning that. I feel like it was like as a kid, and I just found it in some of like my old storage stuff.
Hmm.
And like you can see that Wishbone's like next to Barney and this
Yes.
back here.
Yep.
Like
Awesome.
I also love Wishbone as a kid too. So like I do love seeing how like both Barney and Wishbone get to like work together in the same state they're at, like which is of course Texas.
Yeah.
And like there's like a whole lot of stuff I remember like from my memory with Barney. I never owned a My Party with Barney VHS, so like I only got to watch the videos online, and I
Hmm.
get to see what like My Party with Barney is like. And now I was all like, oh, that's cool. At least like some like their like inner child or like their baby selves can like discover like Barney in this sense. And
Yeah.
then I didn't own a Actimates unfortunately because like once I was a baby, like I feel like that phase was like already like phasing out already. And but I do remember watching the Barney toy commercials as a kid, like the
Hmm.
magic banjo, the I think the electric guitar is also one of them, especially with Barney's magic drums. But
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like once it comes to like the magic banjo commercial, I remember like something really came to mind back when I was in high school. I was rewatching a commercial
Hmm.
from the magic banjo like during the Great Adventure era, and I recognized one of the kids who was on this Nickelodeon show called the Naked Brothers Band, and I was like, wait, does that look like someone I really know of? And then like realizing that's actually Rosalina from the Naked Brothers Band. She was on a Barney commercial, and
Wow.
I was like pretty ironic how like Rosalina was on the Barney song Magic Banjo commercial, and then I had to show it to my sister. I was like, hey, look what I saw. And then she was all like, wow, I didn't know that's Rosalina. And then like I didn't know too. So like I remember watching Naked Brothers Band as well. That was like one of my other favorite shows growing up
Hmm.
when I was in grade school. Like yeah, Naked Brothers Band, and then of course seeing Rosalina on the Barney commercial, and then I do remember like when Demi and Selena were on Barney and Friends as well, especially like other actors and actresses like Madison Pettis, who was also from
Yep.
Corey in the House, and Jake and the Neverland Pirates. I
Hmm.
do remember Kyla Pratt on Barney's Great Adventure and The Proud Family. And then there's of
Yeah.
course Trevor Morgan on Great Adventure, and he was on Jurassic Park
Yep.
and this Disney Channel movie called Genius. And
Hmm.
there's like so many people I know of who were like part of Barney before their time on their other like non-Barney projects.
Yeah. There's actually a lot more than people either recognize or know because like Debbie Ryan, um,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
she started with the Firehouse movie, and then she
Yeah.
went with Me
Mm-hmm.
Life on Deck and those things. But also, I can't think of their names by name, but the characters who played Jackson and the twin girls in the
Yes.
Riff era,
Mm-hmm.
Sophie and Sadie, all three of
Mm-hmm.
those guys were in a Drake and Josh Christmas movie,
Yeah.
also as like orphan kids or whatever it was.
Yeah, they
So
were like foster siblings.
yeah, and then in later years, you have the kid who played Josh in seasons 12 and 13, who's huge on this Netflix series now, and those kind of things. So
Wow.
it is really cool to kind of see being watching those people, as they were kids, watching Barney as fans, and then you see them show up on these other bigger networks and doing bigger things. It really is exciting. I have My Party with Barney. I got it when I was for my 7th birthday. So I have that, and I have the Actimates Barney. But the strange thing is with the Actimates Barney is I've never, you can watch movies within it, like certain movies and things. I've never done that for some reason. Like even having it as a kid, I don't remember. I don't know why. I just never put the tape in and watched it, like and talk, like listen to it, talk with the movie. I should try that sometime because I think that's what the cool thing was about it. I would just play with it and play hide and seek and all those things that you can do with it. But I never watched it with the video, so I should try that sometime just to see what
Hmm.
what that's like. Um, but thank you for being on here, Ariel. Before we end the podcast here today, um, my last question to you is just why Barney? Why do you think you're such a fan of Barney? What does Barney mean to you?
So Barney means to me like someone who I look up to, like, as a friend or family member.
Mhm.
I do feel like everyone in this world needs Barney today, and I think the reason why the whole world today needs Barney is because they need to hear his message of love and kindness, and especially
Yeah,
with like all those like hatred going on these days. I do feel like they all need to learn something from Barney at least.
for sure. I agree 100%. We definitely need more Barney here. Um, and hopefully with this new series, hopefully they do it the right way so we can see the Barney love and Barney magic be spread to more people as the years come. Thank you so much, Ariel, for being here on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Hmm.
And then for everybody else, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to Ariel's story and those kind of things. And like I said before, we have a lot of guests that's coming up here that you guys are really going to enjoy. And so I hope you guys keep enjoying this podcast. And maybe one day we'll see you in your spot of love. Thank you.